My name is Mark Teller. I'm 42, and while most people around here just know me as the quiet guy in Lot 12, what they don't know is that I'm also the CEO and majority shareholder of Western Grid Energy, the company that supplies power to most of this region, including our charming little suburban HOA. I don't usually flex that detail. I moved into this gated community 2 years ago after a messy divorce, wanting peace, quiet, and privacy. I paid cash for the house, kept my lawn mowed, and didn't stir up trouble. I wore jeans and hoodies, never mentioned my business, and figured if I paid my dues and kept to myself, I'd be left alone. Enter Rick Dawson, the HOA president. Rick is the kind of man who treats his clipboard like a badge and his golf cart like a police cruiser. Think ex-mall security guard energy with the ego of a small-town dictator. He ran the HOA like a private empire. Petty fines, bizarre rules, and constant threats about enforcement. I ignored most of it until the storm. It was a Saturday in late October. A brutal nor'easter rolled through the area, knocking over trees, flooding streets, and hammering homes with 50 miles per hour winds. My house is well-built, triple-paned windows, backup sump pump, whole home surge protection. I'd even installed my own solar array with a battery backup, just in case the grid went down. Around 6:45 p.m., the lights flickered. I figured the storm might stress the lines, so I checked my system. Still fully powered. Then silence. Total blackout. My house was dead. No power. No internet. No backup. I went outside, confused. The rest of the neighborhood still had lights. Christmas decorations flickered in the rain. Porch lights glowed warmly. It was just my house. I flipped open my phone, thank God the battery was still at 80%, and called the Western Grid Technician hotline. That's when I got the kicker. Your property was placed under temporary disconnection due to a manual override request from your HOA. I blinked. What? Request submitted this afternoon by a Richard Dawson, the text said. Cited non-compliance with HOA infrastructure rules. Power was remotely shut off at 6:32 p.m. You should have received a notice. I hadn't. Not a call. Not an email. Not even a knock. Now I was standing in my driveway, soaked in freezing rain, watching my neighbors sip wine in lit-up living rooms while my house sat dark like a tomb. I marched straight to the HOA clubhouse, a ridiculous little building with faux columns and plastic palm trees out front. Rick was there, of course, dry and smug, drinking cocoa with 2 board members like they were royalty in exile. What the hell, Rick? I barked, dripping wet. He didn't even blink. Mark, your solar array violates Section 8B of the Community Code. Unauthorized exterior modifications. We warned you. I narrowed my eyes. That array was approved by the county, and it's not visible from the street. You think that justifies cutting my power during a storm? He leaned back. This HOA has the right to enforce compliance through utility coordination. Maybe next time you'll listen when we say no. You never said no, I growled. You never said anything. Rick waved it off. Power will be restored after the board votes on your violation. Next meeting's in 12 days. 12 days. That's when I knew this wasn't about the rules. This was personal. What Rick didn't realize is that while the HOA might send strongly worded letters and wield petty fines, I control the literal flow of electricity to every house in this neighborhood. You want to play hardball, Rick? You just picked a fight with the guy who owns the scoreboard. Perfect. Here's part 2 of your story. HOA cut power to my home during a storm. Didn't know I own the utility company. This wraps up the power play and serves some serious HOA karma. All within 4,000 characters. By the time I got back home that stormy night, I wasn't just cold and wet. I was livid. I sat in the dark, lit only by a single camping lantern, staring at the HOA violation notice Rick had shoved under my door while I was gone. It was laughable. Unauthorized solar installation. Immediate corrective action required. Non-compliance may result in further utility restrictions. Utility restrictions? They had no idea who they were messing with. I made a few calls that night, not as Mark the neighbor, but Mark Teller, CEO of Western Grid Energy. I had our legal counsel dig into every file Rick submitted to us. And guess what? His disconnection request was bogus. He used a long-defunct HOA clause, forged a time-stamped PDF, and flagged it urgent safety hazard. Total fiction. Not only was my solar array legal and compliant, it was inspected and approved 6 months earlier by both the city and the HOA Architectural Committee. Rick either didn't check or didn't care. What he didn't know was that my company flags manual override requests for executive-level review in certain zip codes, including this one. Why? Because of frequent abuse. And guess who created that policy 2 years ago? Yep, me. I didn't hit back immediately. I wanted it to sting. The next morning, I powered my home back on manually from our private technician portal. Took less than 90 seconds. Then I set the real plan in motion. First, I instructed our PR team to send a formal notice of fraudulent HOA interference to every homeowner in the subdivision. It explained how the disconnection request violated service agreements, endangered my property during a storm, and was potentially criminal under state utility law. Second, I had our techs temporarily reroute the system to log every voltage dip and spike in the neighborhood. Why? Because HOA common areas like the pool, clubhouse, and yes, even Rick's office were not on their own grid. They ran off shared infrastructure. Then I did the final thing that sealed Rick's fate. I contacted the State Regulatory Commission. Within 48 hours, they launched a formal investigation into the HOA board's misuse of utility authority. By Friday, Rick got served a cease and desist notice and a warning that any further tampering would be referred for criminal prosecution. But I wasn't done. At the next emergency HOA meeting, called by a few board members who'd had enough, I showed up in a clean suit, walked up to the podium, and introduced myself. Properly. Mark Teller, I said, CEO of Western Grid Energy, and legal owner of the infrastructure you've been abusing. The room went silent. Rick's face drained of color like someone yanked the cord on his projector. I held up copies of the forged disconnect request. This form, I said calmly, is not only fraudulent, it carries up to 5 years in prison under Title 18 utility interference laws. But I'm not pressing charges. I let that hang for a beat. Yet, someone in the back muttered, "Oh my God." Rick stammered something about intent and enforcement authority. I cut him off. You don't have authority. Not over power. Not over people's property. This isn't a fiefdom, Rick. It's a neighborhood. Then I pulled out the kicker. As of this morning, I've purchased the land easement rights under every home in this community, including the HOA common zones. I now control access for all utility maintenance and energy infrastructure here, effective immediately. Rick looked like he might pass out. The board voted him out on the spot. A replacement president was sworn in, someone saying, "Thank God." They issued a formal apology to me, waived my HOA dues for the next 5 years, and publicly announced Rick was banned from holding any HOA office again. As for Rick, he quietly sold his house and moved out 3 weeks later. Word is, he tried to pull the same power trip in another subdivision, but they already knew his name. And me? I'm still here. Lights on. Panels shining. No more golf cart drive-bys. No more fake citations. Just peace. Funny thing is, I never wanted a fight. But if someone tries to cut me off in the dark, they better make sure I don't own the light switch.